Hello everybody and welcome back to Alaris YouTube channel. Today in our video we will describe how the statistics are calculated in the system. Call statistics calculated by the system are based on data received in the CDR files from the switches. However, it is not very efficient to use raw CDR data to feed into report building, invoicing, etc. All statistic-related functions in the system use a specific data source called analytic cubes, also known as OLAP cubes. There are several types of analytic cubes and they differ depending on the period. There are minute, hour, day, week and month cubes. Generally, the cube is a set of statistics, number of calls, traffic volume, ISR, ACD margin, etc. and they are calculated for a specific combination of objects. For example, daily stats for traffic from a client to a country by supplier. By default, the hierarchy of cube calculation looks as follows, and as you can see, only minute cubes are calculated based on the raw CDR data. Every time when raw CDRs are imported by the system, minute cubes are calculated using them. On the second level of the hierarchy are hour cubes. They can also be based on raw CDRs, but by default they are calculated based on minute cubes. Daily cubes in turn are calculated based on the hour cubes. And finally, both week and month cubes are based on the daily cubes. The logic makes the calculation much faster and less resource intensive in comparison. For example, with the case when all cubes are based on raw CDRs. Now let's investigate different aspects of cube calculation. Generally, there are two main triggers which make all cubes be calculated. The first important parameter is stats calculation threshold. For our example, let's take 1 hour cube for the period starting from 2 to 3 and imagine the dimension parameter was set to 100 CDRs per hour. It means that every time when the system receives 100 CDRs and they exceed the mentioned threshold, the priority is increased and the cube is recalculated faster. The calculation happens every time when the new threshold of 100 CDRs is exceeded during this hour. For example, if the system receives 600 CDRs, the cube is being recalculated 6 times. Another trigger is the parameter stats calculation delay, minutes, hour. Based on our example, it is a count of minutes that must pass after the period is finished and the cube will be calculated or recalculated. It is normally used to wait for the CDRs which could be received after the period is over. Usually, 15 minutes is enough for most CDRs to be imported by the database. However, this depends on how many calls are not yet complete over that period, and thus do not yet have CDR record on the soft switch. At 3:15, our cube will be calculated even though the stats calculation threshold parameter was not exceeded. Both of these parameters can be found in Start, Administration, System Settings, Statistics module section. Additionally, when the calculation is not yet performed, the stats could be displayed as 0 in the Analytics interface. Please be especially careful when setting or editing the cube calculation thresholds. If thresholds are too low, it will result in constant recalculation and therefore in lack of near real-time statistics in the system. We recommend the following guidelines. Set the minute cube threshold to a high value, higher than the typical amount of CDRs per minute, so that minute cubes are only calculated after the respective minutes and no intermediate recalculations required. Set the hour cube threshold to 15-30 of the typical hourly amount of CDRs for peak hours, so that the stats for the current hour are refreshed 3-5 times during the hour. Set the daily cube threshold to the amount of CDRs that the system typically receives by 8-9 am. So by beginning of regular office hours, the system has already calculated the first version of the statistics for the current day. Set weekly and monthly cubes thresholds of comparative high values so no frequent recalculations are made for the current week of the month. Please also note that cubes are set for a limited period of time and you need to specify the amount of cubes that must be present in the system. If you set the parameter minute cube partition count to 720, then only 12 hours worth of minutes data will be displayed in the Analytics interface. The same goes for other cube partition count settings. When setting these parameters, please also remember that more cubes means that more HDD space required to store the data. So at some point, if you set high values of analytical cubes, You may require to expand the disk space available for database server. Please also know that the necessary lower-level data must be available in the system. That depends on the value of the respective cube count parameter in the administration system setting statistic module. For example, to recalculate a day that is 20 days in the past, while the hour cube partition count is set to less than 24 multiplied by 20, the system has no other choice than calculate the required data stats on raw CDR data, which may be a heavy job in case of higher traffic volume. A typical situation when the stats displayed by the system seem wrong is when some rates for the past period had been changed and the respective CDR rewriting procedure is running. The system cannot recalculate the affected analytical cubes before the rewriting is finished, so until that, the stats figures may seem wrong. This is a regular situation and the system makes all necessary corrections as fast as possible. There are two reports that allow the user to monitor the cube status. There are Analytical Cube Status, Analytical Cube Calculation Queue. They are intuitive in use and can help you monitor the calculation and recalculation process. For example, here's the report Analytical Cube Status. We choose our cubes and can see the following column: cube type, period, and the status. As you can see, some of the cubes are being calculated right now, and for most of them the calculation is finished. In the column you can find the count of CDRs already present in analytical cubes data, and in the new CDR count column you can see the number of CDRs which are present in the database, but have not been yet calculated as part of the respective analytical cube. The last column shows when the cube was last changed. Now you are familiar with the logic of cube calculation, and if you have any other questions, you are always welcome to contact our support team. If you have any suggestions regarding the challenge development, you can contact us by the following email. See you in the next lesson, and thank you for watching.